السلام علیکم بینندگان عزیز. امیدوار هستم که در هر نقطه دنیا باشین خوش و آرام باشین. خوش آمدین در برنامه ما امروز در صدای حق تلویزیون. امروز بخیر بسیار یک میهمان گرامی داریم. اسمشان است سپوجمه جان ناصری و امروز بخیر امروز ما راجع به بسیار چیزهای مهم مخصوصاً immigration. شما چندین بار امروز ما تماس گرفتین و سوالایتان بسیار زیاد است. میخواستم که امو نفر که اکسپرتیسش است بیاریم در شو امروز که امو را انشالله امروز صحبت کنیم راجع بهش. Welcome so much to our Sadai Hack Weekly programming. We have a very special guest today. We have Spojmie Nasiri. She will be helping us today to understand the immigration process. I know you've had a lot of questions. There's no better person out there to be able to answer them than her. Just a very brief background of Spojmie John. She is a first-generation immigrant and principal attorney at the law office of Spojmie Nasiri PC, a minority-owned law firm in Pleasant Town, California. Mrs. Nasiri received her BA in political science from the University of California, Davis, and her JD from Golden Gate University School of Law. Mrs. Nasiri assists clients with a wide variety of immigration matters, including applications with the consulates and U.S. citizenship and immigration services, representing clients detained by the Department of Homeland Security, defending immigrants in removal proceedings, and immigration court. Mrs. Nasiri is a member of the California State Bar since 2006 and is admitted to practice before the California Supreme Court and the U.S. District Court for Northern California. She is currently a member of the American Immigration Lawyers Association and was selected by the National Advocates Top 100 Lawyers for 2015, American Society of Legal Advocates, top 40 lawyers under 40 in 2015. Mrs. Nasiri was also selected as a Northern California Rising Star by Super Lawyers Magazine for 2015 and 2016. She served as president of the Council on American Islamic Relations, otherwise known as CARE, for the San Francisco Bay Area chapter from 2015 to 2018, and is currently a board member. Mrs. Nasiri is president of We Have Hope Foundation. She was inducted into the Alameda County Women's Hall of Fame in 2019 for her immigration-related work. In addition to English, Mrs. Nasiri is fluent in Pashto and Dari. Mrs. Nasiri migrated to the US as a refugee in the 1980s and grew up in the Bay Area of California. Without further ado, I wish that I was able to translate this because it's so incredibly important. All of these amazing accomplishments. We are so proud of you. Welcome to our show, Spojmie John.
Assalamu alaikum, Fresh John. Tashakkur az dawattan. Assalamu alaikum ba mehmanatan. Dear Salaman Tulatam Randikum, Khada Duksida program, inshallah, information, immigration, barakitas, istifada wasi.
Wonderful. Spojmie John, if you could tell us in your own words a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to go into this line of work, that would be wonderful. Spojmie John, اگر اجازه باشه شما کم ذره برای ما بگوین که چرا شما امی بخش حقوق انتخاب کردین؟
Tashakkur, Fresh John. So I got into immigration. I came here at a young age, around 5 or 6. For me, it's not a unique story like many of our fellow Afghans who migrated here in the early 80s with different types of struggles to come to the US. For me, my personal struggle was when I came here, I came with my father, but my mother wasn't able to come here to the US. So from age 6 to about 14, I lived here in the US with my siblings. And my father and my mother remained in part of the time in Afghanistan and part of the time in Pakistan. So for me, having that separation was very impactful for any child growing up without a mother. Through law school, I did various other stuff like family law, criminal law, construction, defect stuff. And I fell back into immigration because I started doing detained work in the local prisons and just connected with it. And ever since 2011, I've been doing immigration. ما وقتی زوام سوال ما په immigration باندې کې کار کړی دا ورکه توګه د ما د مونږ د سوز په شپږ کلنی کې امریکا ته راغلی وم بیا ما پلار سره رسیدل ما د ما ورونو خوند سره بیا په 14 کلنۍ کې د ما مور امریکې ته راغله. دا سختي مشکلاتونه چې موږ په امیګریشن باره کې لیدلي وو، په هغه باندې ما ارزو درلود چې نور کسان سره کومک وکړم.
You know, thank you so much for sharing that. That's something that I didn't know about you. And it really struck a chord with me because, you know, we see recently, especially with this administration, how people are dealing with parents being separated with children at the border and, you know, parents even not being able to, you know, bring their other spouse over. I think that that's even more inspirational to me that you were able to still succeed in this very, very difficult situation that you were put in. میخواستم که بگویم که این بسیار یک چیز نو است راجع به سپیچ جان من خبر نداشتم، اما بسیار مهم است که متوجه شویم که سپیچ جان از سن 6 سالگی تا 14 سالگی را از خاطر از میپراسته امیگریشن متاسفانه که همراه پدرجان خود و خورا بیادرای خود آمد، اما مادرجانش نتونست که بیایه برای چندین سال و این بسیار سرش تاثیر کرد و از اونمو خاطر انتخاب کرد امی بخشه. Thank you again for sharing that very personal story. And it's so important that you took that pain and you now use that to heal other people in your work. And I have a great deal of respect for that. So, especially my job, I get a lot of clients from the line of work that I'm in. I do a lot of legal interpretation. And I have some of my asylees who come in different ways, different modes. And I think the newest wave is going to be the special immigrant visas. However, there is another wave of Afghans that have been coming on a newer type of visa. And the visa is not so much newer, but the U visa is being used as a different method. I've noticed in some of the cases that I've been working on. I know that the K1 fiance visa is something in the past also that people have been using to bring people over. I think there's a bit of a confusion. What happens with community members and clients, they get very confused and they compare each other's cases to each other. How come Mohammed got this and they're getting benefits? I can't even get anything. Why is it that they have their green card and I've been waiting several years and I don't have any type of proper documentation? This has become a very big conversation in our community. So I wanted to ask you in very, you know, it may seem like a simple question for somebody who's in this area, but maybe not so much for people, the differences, for example, between a special immigrant visa, AU visa, K1 visa, or any other popular visas, student visas that Afghans use to come to this country. بسیاری افغانای ما هستن که پناهندگی میگیرن اینجا میاین و وقتی که برشان ترجمانی میکنم هر کیسشان فرق میکنه و ویزیشان هم فرق میکنه. همه متاسفانه که امروز یکی دیگه خود صحبت میکنن سوالای زیاد برشان پیدا میشه. اولین سوالی که برشان پیدا میشه که چرا مثلا این نفر که اینجا آمده میتونه که فود استامپ بگیره، میتونه که کمک دولت بگیره، چرا این نفر گرین کارت داره من ندارم. و زیاد کوشش میکنم که برشان بفهمانم که هر ویزا از خود قانون داره و هر ویزا از خود یک شرایط داره. اگر شما میتونین که برای ما بفهمانین فرق از این ویزا رو بسیار خوب میشه.
ما کمک یک ذره در انگلیسی میکنم باز من میتونم که در این بگم میشه. You know, it's really, I told you earlier in the call, it's really great to speak with you because very often I get people who have no idea in the field and don't understand the complexity, especially in the 4 years that was the nightmare that we've been facing. First and foremost, you know, Trump ran on the platform of family separations, travel ban, you know, gutting asylum and the refugee policies and pushing back and abolishing DACA, which is for young children who came here with their parents without permission. But keep in mind, as you know, grateful as we are to be over this roller coaster that we call an immigration world, you know, Biden may need years to reverse Trump's immigration policies on DACA, on asylum, on family separation, on ICE raids, on private detentions, and everything else, consular processing. So the biggest difference is SIV, the special immigrant visas, are authorized by the Congress to allow those who are translators in the US military in Iraq and Afghanistan. Those processes are primarily done in Afghanistan or in Iraq to bring an individual here. The numbers have been increasing, over the years, but statistics are maybe 2 or 3 in 10 actually get that special immigrant visa. When they arrive in the United States, they are given ample support to a certain time, and then after that they have to work on their own. So they're still able to get benefits like Medi-Cal and maybe some county supported funding to continue living, but they are limited with those funding. The other way that someone can come into the United States is what's called a spousal visa. So if you are a green card holder or you are a US citizen, you are authorized under US immigration laws to file for your spouse. Keep in mind, if you are a US citizen and you're filing a petition for your spouse, there's no waiting period for the visa to become available. So it's a very classic question that I get all the time is I'll have clients who are referred from one to another. One is a citizen, one is a green card holder. Once the case is processed halfway through, then they have to wait for the visa to become available, which could take years. If you're a citizen, you don't have to wait for the visa. So that's primarily one of the reasons why when people are comparing and saying, my cousin, my aunt, my uncle, so-and-so got it, you don't know what you're doing, what's going on. And so you have these conversations with clients. If this is a green card, so right now with COVID, as you're aware, the US Embassy in Kabul is closed, and in majority of all over the world, they are closed. So even if your case is getting to the National Visa Center, it's not getting scheduled because it's indefinitely closed and there's no information updated on when they will reopen. And again, if the winter season COVID gets increased, then it's likely going to remain closed. So that's the biggest difference. The other thing I get a lot is the K-1 fiance visas. Right now, the K-1 fiance visas are in disarray. And because the State Department has given it a low priority to process them. So even if someone had an interview already before COVID, I, along with thousands of other immigration attorneys, are not able to process these K-1. They're not issuing the visas. There is something called a writ of mandamus, which is a lawsuit that you bring. And alhamdulillah, I'll say that today, one of my clients is coming from Afghanistan. So I am just ecstatic. I keep texting him, say, so this is after 6 months of litigating in federal court. And there's nothing wrong with these cases. There's no issue of, security, no issue of fraud. These clients have had their interviews over a year and a half ago. And they kept getting delayed, and then they came to, so they had filed it on their own. I also have clients of my own who are doing that. But the fear is that in our community and many immigrant communities that if I sue the government, they're going to retaliate and now I'm not going to get my case at all. That's absolutely not true. So I would say I have about a half a dozen fiance cases that are stuck, installed, and they can issue, if they've already had their interview before COVID, they can go ahead and issue the visa. But their argument is they need to be re-oath, meaning they need to go back in person. And since the embassy is closed, my argument was fine. Send them to Dubai, send them to Mumbai, send them somewhere else where they can have the interview. Well, after 5 months of litigating, alhamdulillah, I would say that one of my clients is coming today and then another is coming in 2 weeks. So litigation does work, unfortunately, and it's costly. It's costly, but it's also, one thing I always tell my clients is that when you sue, it's not to get a yes answer, it's to get an answer because they're not providing an answer. And then DACA is for, deferred action for childhood arrivals, which is for someone who is here illegally, and now there may be a pathway under Biden. Would you like me to just shortly say that in Farsi?
Sure, please, absolutely.
دمی برای کسایی که من قبل میزدم مال در انگلیسی بیادر خارجان کمی قانونی پروسس ایمیگریشن در امریکا فرق داره که چه قسم کیس یک کس داشته باشه. اگر با کس گرین کارت هولدر باشه وقت زیادتر میگیره که ویزا برای شوهر یا خانمشان که امریکا بیاین. اگر کس سیتیزن باشه میتونه که زودتر پتیشن فایل کنه اینجا بیاین. با نامزدی پتیشن که کس به نامزدی میارن، یک دفعه که اینجا به نامزدی آمدن باز باید در آمریکا رسید بکنه در 90 روز بعد از او گرین کارت میگیره. با کسی که با طفلای خود میارن اگه سنش 21 ساله باشه زیادتر وقت میگیره، اگه کسی سنش 21 ساله کمتر باشه مادر پدر میخوان که بیارن میتونن که زودتر بیارن. یک چی که من بیادن از زیادتر میبینم یک کس که باشه میخواد که با سیتیزن است باید سیتیزن باشه که با مادر پدر و بیادر خورا فعال کنیم. دما با ما 50 نفر زنگ میزنه خودشان پتیشن با مادر جان و پدر جانشان فعال کرده، باز پتیشن با خورای بیادرایشان کرده، سنشان 21 ساله کمتر است. وقتی که اینترویو میره با مادر جان با پدر جان ویسا میده، خورا بیادرها باید باطل بکنه. امی بسیار جگرخون میشن از خاطر که مادر پدر چطور رشد کار خود بانن. ما یک کیسا رو زیاد کردیم که باید مادر جان پدر جان که ویسیش گرفت که آمدن گرین کارت خود گرفتن لطفاً باز برای اولادای خود که سنش 21 ساله کمتر باشه پتیشن فعال کنه. امی جنجال زیاد من میبینم فرشته جان.
تشکر بسیار سپوجمه جان. Two things I'm going to say in English and Dari. One thing is that also there are people who not wanting to bring their children but wanting to bring their siblings. There's a 13 to 15-year wait, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
So when I tell people this, they think I'm making it up.
No, I had a call yesterday and someone told me, my brother is here, but someone told me if he goes to India, then it's going to be faster because I'm a US citizen. It's insignificant of where that person is. They can even be a citizen of the UK or Germany. It doesn't matter. A sibling has to wait in line, you know, like you said, those years.
Absolutely. بسیاری افغان هستن بر من زنگ میزنن میگن که اولادای ما خب پیش ما هستن میخوایم که همشیره خدا یا برادر خدا بخوایم. برشان میگم که 13 تا 15 سال باید آدم معطل باشه اما باور نمیکنن. تشکر سپوجمه جان که ثبوت کردی. Thank you for clarifying that so that all the people who are reaching out do have this.
Yeah, it's a constant, and that is the biggest factor I see. And the biggest factor I see is it's devastating when a sibling has filed for the parents and filed for their siblings under 21 to go to the interview and be told, no, your siblings are not going, they're going to have to wait. The other thing is the F1 student visas. The process of the F1 student visas is that you apply to get accepted to a school like anybody else. And if you've taken the TOEFL and you've met the exams and you meet the requirements and you're an educated person, the school has to accept you as an international student. And then they process your visa to come in. There's no way around that. So when someone says, oh, that's fine. But most attorneys don't do that work because you have to apply to the school itself first to be admitted, and then you can retain an attorney to help you. And then the other thing is, you know, a lot of people ask about dawatnama, visitor visa.
Yes.
Wari sikhpal family pa yor chon miasti wadil para raudi. Aga waqtan was nista. Dumra visa na worki. Visa pa kasana metana. Aga me khoin ki ami petition bukanim banami DS 160 online application ba dawatnama. But the nazari ma bakati waklai diga. 90% است که 99% است که یا ایره دینای کنن نبانن از خاطری که اول ویسا نمیتن حال که کووید است. اگه کووید خلاص شد انشالله یا کیسا رو پیش میبره کسی میخواد که فایل کنه با دعوتنامه they're not given them one of the reason I would say is that آنها که ویسا میگیرن باز اینجا میان با اسایلم فایل میکنن پس نمیرن.
Yes.
And number two is they just don't give it to from those countries.
Exactly. And I'm so glad you brought up that point because I also have many clients, not only clients, but community members who ask for, they'll ask me for guidance or for a letter or how to write an invitation. And I always steer them away from this as well because it's really not worth your time if it's not going
well,
to.
I would respectfully disagree. I would say, go ahead, try it. You have nothing to lose other than your time. I'm just not going to file them because I know what I get in them, right?
Exactly.
I'm not going to take
that's a really good way of stating it. Yeah.
I just stated, I said, you know, you can get the invitation letters online. The application is pretty straightforward. I used to do many of them years ago. And it's not just Afghanistan. It's just a lot of countries that they're not issuing them anymore. Sure. So for me, as an attorney, as an ethical, honest attorney, I say, you know what? It's not something that you're going to get, but absolutely go ahead, try it. You might get it. Most of the time they don't get it.
That's thank you so much for that advice, because I think that's a much better way to word it, and that's a much better way to an approach to go about it, and I will be using that. تشکر بسیار زیاد سپوجمای جان. برای اینکه بسیار نفرا از کمیونیتی افغانای ما پرسان میکنه که دعوتنامه رو میتونی برام خونه پلیکلی، میتونی که ختم اشتراک کنی. من متاسفانه نمیکنم این کارا، برای اینکه ما فکر میکنم که وقتشون ضایع میشه. ما از این بابت میخوایم که دایرکتشون کنم که در وبسایت برن و کوشش کنن، و اگه شد اگه نشد خب باز خودشان باز میبینن، تجربه میگیرن. And another point that you brought up that really affected me was this excitement and this joy and enthusiasm you have, because I do want to highlight the successes. I know that there's been a lot of hindrance in the last 4 years, but prior to that, I had a U visa case that I was a part of for, I would say, about 5 years. Very, very difficult case, very high profile media case. And this particular client had, in the midst of, I guess, the media attention that he was receiving, in the midst of what had occurred, he had some personal losses in Afghanistan. And it was a very emotional thing that here he's playing this tug of war where he's trying to come here and be safe, but in the same token, has these losses personally due to his case. And I remember the day that he arrived with his family, and I remember going to the airport, and I feel like I've done so many of these cases, but that feeling of seeing them after everything that they've been through, and writing and typing, a lot of people don't know the work that goes behind this, 30 to 40 to 50 page affidavits. I think it was one of the best feelings that I've ever felt in my entire life. So I commend you and applaud you. And I'm so excited that you have that today. I know that you've had so many, but today in particular, while we're speaking. یک چیزی بسیار مهم میخواستم بگویم که سپوجمای جان گفتن که امروز یک کلاینتشان به خیر از افغانستان میآید و خودم به یادم آمد یک خاطره بسیار خوش که تا روزی که زنده هستم فراموش نمیکنم. یک کلاینت ما 4.5 سال، تقریبا 5 سال، چیز کم 5 سال بود که بسیار با سختی و مشکلات ویزیش قبول شد، و چون در تلویزیون و رادیو و اخبار ستوریش چاپ شده بود، چند نفر از فامیل خود از دست داده بود در کابل، و این بسیار سر من تاثیر میکرد، مخصوصا سر یگان دفعه خونم میبرد مرا، زیاد سرش فکر میکردم، میگفتم کاش که اگه اینجا بیاین یک زندگی بهتر داشته باشن، خب بازم امیزامتش میارزه. بازم اون روزی که آمدن در میدان، او احساسی که داشتم اصلا نمیتونم که زبانی بگویم که چقدر یک احساس خوب بود. و من فکر میکنم از واقع من زیاد گریه کردم. I'm pretty sure that I cried more than they did.
من کلاینت خدا گفتم که گفتم باور نداری سر گپ مگه من از تو که 1000 دفعه دیگه خوشحال هستم. خنده کرد گفت I don't think that's possible. So it's very, very gratifying. A lot of us do this work because we are passionate about it. And it takes a lot of heartache. It takes a lot to emotional toll داره. تو نیست که من در دفترم باشم. من کلاینت ها زیادتر دارم از هر مملکت، از افغانستان، از پاکستان، از مکسیکو، از آفریقا. I have a very balanced practice, alhamdulillah. So when people say majority of your clients are Afghans, no, they're not, because Afghans will choose if they want to go to an Afghan. And I speak Pashto the best I can. Pashto لسه من فارسی که میفهمم، مینا گوشش میکنم انگلیسی. So من میفهمم با پروسس با چیزا. مگم بسیار می یگان کسا که میگن که چرا فیه که زیاد است. یک کس امریکایی وکیل که باشه متوازیت نمیکنه که کسی افغانای خود ما میکنه. همین کوشش میکنم که اجوکیت میکنم که نه فرما نیست، بسیار کار مشکل است حال فعلا، بسیار با مشکلاتی که پیش میرن. مگم دل خودشان اگر میخواین که پیش امریکایی میرن و با پروسس نکاح خط و تذکره کارت تولد چیزا، دمی 12 سال میشه که من خودم وکیل ایمیگریشن هستم. مگم هر کیس که میکنم با به دل خود میکنیم که گویی تو است که کیس خود ما باشه. آرزو دارم که مامی نفر که ما را هایر میکنه که با کامو سکسسفل باشن بکنیم. از خاطری که این به ایتو نیست که به پیسه جمع کردن با کار با وظیفه but it's a passion. پشن است که میخوایم که با کسایش پیش ببریم. الحمدلله من در بیاری هستم. آقایان ما زیاد است نمخته ما کسا هزار استیک میتونیم بکنیم از خاطر که ایمیگریشن فدراست. مگم در بینش بسیار جگرخونی میآید. بسیار میتونید که یک کس انجام ده به شما که از کسای زنان که داریم که کس آورده باشه، رسی کرده باشه، باز بسیار لطش کرده باشه، domestic violence باشه، sexual abuse باشه. هر نفر میتو هستن. مشکل است که مادر هستم، اولاد دارم، دخترها دارم که خانه میایی اولاد خانه میبینی که چه قسم مردم در دنیا هستن. مگم باز که کمک برشم برسه بسیار خوشحال میشم. یگان وقت دخترای ما کلان هستن 18 ساله است 16 ساله است من شکاتشان نمیده کسا نمیگم مگم کمک گپا که دنیای تو هست تو چیزا میشه باز خوشحال میشه که خب مادر تو کمک کردی کتشان امی کمک است. موضوع خاطر گفتم کتشما فرشته جان شیری کردم که امروز میام صبح که تکس مرسه میکنم گفت یا من میرم پیششان در میدان هوایی از خاطر یه ادمنستریشن هر چی که بر را بکنی همین ترامپ سپورتر که میگه که wait in line در پروسس بیاین لاین که ودریگه پکانینی هر چیزی پکانینی کار و که بیام کیسن بندگی in دقل پاره it's unfair it's unjust to go through the process, to wait for years, to do everything right, and to invest all your money with a lawyer, and yet you get this pushback. So, alhamdulillah, Biden years will, despite, no one's perfect, but anybody but the Trump administration who've done nothing but, just throw everything under the bus of immigration. For example, we have over 25,000 asylum seekers at the border in Mexico. When they under, United Nations protocol, they have a right to come into the United States to seek asylum. So we'll, inshallah, see the future brighter for immigration law because under this administration, everything has been impacted. And maybe I'm being biased, but I think immigration has tremendously been impacted.
And yeah, we'll definitely gonna touch on that and talk about that. It definitely has. I mean, there are things that are factual and there are things that are opinion, but this is a fact that there has been this roller coaster of decisions being made and changed, kind of on the whim. But before we address that, I wanted to talk about a couple of really important points that you made. And first of all, I'm also a mother of daughters, so I do understand how incredibly important it is to help women and help empower them through their struggles, and hope and pray that none of that gets repeated in our own personal lives with our own children, and to make them aware. Awareness is very, very key to anything that we do in our lives, especially as parents in this country. So thank you for bringing that up. And the second thing that I wanted to talk about, and I'm so glad you brought it up because this bothers me a lot. Let's support our, local Afghan American, whether they're lawyers, whether they're small businesses, and let's treat them like we would treat any other attorney. You're not going to go into Walter's law firm and start negotiating prices. The purpose behind you seeking legal counsel is to be able to have your case be processed comfortably with somebody who's culturally competent and understands either of the languages that you speak. And to undermine, this is a very big pet peeve of mine, undermine and try to undersell that person's services is not the correct way to be. And I will say this very openly and honestly, it's the same thing when it comes to my business. Business is business. If you want, of course, there's always going to be somebody who's struggling and we can guide them toward how they can get financial aid. That's different. But if you're going to be paying for a service, make sure that you value the person who's giving you that service. Of course, we have to be comfortable. I'm not saying that you have to go to an Afghan for everything that you do. There has to be a level of comfort, but also respect that. دو چیز بسیار مهم پیش از اینکه گپ بزنیم راجع به administration Donald Trump و immigration. اول از که چون خودم از سیاستدار هستم و خودم بسیار درک میکنم که چقدر مهم است که خانم‌ها را کمک کنیم، مخصوصا در کاری که میکنیم در دیوی و خانمایی که لط میخورن و یا emotional abuse می داشته باشن چقدر سرشان تاثیر میکنه. باید اولادای خود دختر و بچه هر دویشان متوجه بسازیم و باید توجهشان در از اینمی باشه که چی رقم آدم یکی کار نشه و اگر خدای نخواسته شود چی باید از آدم بکنه. دوم از این افغانای عزیز ما، دوستتان دارم، خوارم هستین، بیادرم هستین، اما یک چیزی که بسیار زیاد به نظر من مهم است و بسیار زیاد باید متوجه باشیم که وقتی که در یک دفتر وکیل شما میرین، اگه والتر باشه یا رابرت باشه یا جان باشه جگره نمیکنین، اما وقتی که افغان میباشه جگره میکنین. این کار درست نیست. اونمون کار و زحمت وظیفه که یک افغان در کار خود بزنس خود میکنه اونم قدر زحمت در دیگر جای میشه. باید آدم کم نزنه افغان خدا، باید بره وظیفهش بگویه که نمی وظیفه را من کار دارم، اینمی وظیفه را باید است که من انجام بدم، اما و احترام از اون نفر داشته باشی. اون نفر کلتور فرهنگت میفهمه، اون نفر لسانت میفهمه. لطفاً کوشش کنین که ایره متوجه باشین همیشه. That was my little lecture of the day. And
no, and I think more than anything, I think it's a human nature to bargain. It's not sure. About the bargaining. I think it's about trust and integrity more than anything. I think that we need to, it's not just me. I think that we need to value it the same way that we would value another person in terms of, yeah, they're capable of doing it. But there's also a lot of cultural differences, especially for new immigrants. So, we try to be patient, and alhamdulillah, I have a lot of connections in the community that if someone is not able to afford it, we find a source to help them. And I also take pro bono cases.
Sure.
Devastating cases. But overall, I think we just need to up our community more, more than anything.
I agree. And there's always going to be extenuating circumstances in which people can't do things. And, most law firms offer some pro bono services, and that's a great thing, but definitely let's not, if you can and you're willing and able, not take advantage if possible. Moving on to the current administration, and working with a lot of asylees over a decade now, but now in the last 4 years, I've noticed a lot of cases have been upheld. A lot of cases are not moving. If you want to, Spojmie John, please tell us a little bit about that. The 4 ساله که رئیس جمهور است، کیس‌های ما یگانش شور نخورده یا یگانش پراسته نشده. من خودم شخصا بسیار مشکلات دارم و میخواستم که از پیشتان بپرسم که چرا.
Trump ran on the platform of xenophobia and hate and bigotry. So, it's not only asylum cases that have been stalled, but it's everything. Legal immigration, like when we are filing spousal petitions, when we're filing parent petitions, we are seeing astronomical requests for evidence for documentation that either have been submitted already, or they are in the process, finding something. So the administration has not only used the legal avenues to put like the Muslim ban, travel ban, predominantly from Muslim countries, dump all the legitimate asylee seekers at the borders of Mexico and other countries, but devastated the system here in the United States. And besides the executive orders, besides the legal avenues, the administrations like DHS, Department of Homeland Security, USCIS, have been given memos and instructions to slow down the process. So a lot of it has to do with that. زیادتر وقت کسان وای ولید ما کیست مرا وقت نیسی ولی سما پتیشن ورکړی ولی نور documentation غواړي. دا د Trump administration process وسی کم خلک امریکا ته راسي که په قانوني لار باندې که په executive order. یگان وقت اصلا کلاینت های ما یا کسای دیگر که با ما زنگ میزنه که چرا ما کل داکومنت ها رو داده بدم یا باز می کاغذ رو میخوایم. یک راست که می ترامپ ادمنستریشن کل کیس ها رو زیادتر بسیار که پروسس نشوه برای اگزیکتیو اوردر، برای پالیسی. سوم را که است زیادتر وقت می کیس ها که هر چی که با قانونی بکنیم، هر چی که با داکومنت های میخواین بعد از اون یارا رو پیدا میکنه که کمتر کنه که پروسس نره. مگم آلی که کووید است در خاطر کیسا در USCIS زودتر پروسس نمیشه، کیسا در نشنال سنتر که پروسس میشه باز اونجا میمانه از خاطر اگر این چوید باشه در هر مملکت افغانستان، جرمنی، هر جای امی امبسی امریکا و زیادترشان کف هسته تا که واز نشه و کیسا هیچ پیش نمیره. اگرش میخواد کسی که کش کمیونیکیشن بکنه کس نیست که پس جوابتان بده.
خب بسیار خوب. Thank you so much for that. So it's really important, I guess, to think about now that we will be going into another administration. I know that you mentioned that it's going to take a very long time to reverse a lot of the damage. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what kind of reforms will be needed to be made in order for the process to become, I guess, more smoother or faster or to become a process period at this point. I know that COVID is a huge hindrance in many aspects of people's lives, not only immigration, but a lot of processing in different governmental services. یک چیز سوال دیگه که میخواستم پرسان کنم راجع به ازی است که این حالی که رئیس جمهور نو داریم، این حال بسیاری 4 ساله که امی قانونا تغییر کرده و چیزا آسان‌تر شده. این حال چی ضرور است که باید شوه، چی تغییرات باید بیاید که این اسنادا پراسش یا زودتر شوه یا کارا بهتر انجام شوه.
So, there are astronomical policies, memorandums, and, executive orders, like I said earlier in the conversation, it's a roller coaster. We wake up in the morning and things are changed. When the travel ban happened, people were stranded at the airport on a Saturday, and even green card holders, H-1B holders. My husband's colleague at the Kaiser Hospital was Iranian, and he had a green card, and he was coming back from visiting his mother. He was stuck at the airport. He couldn't go. He had to go back to Iran until a week later when the Trump administration changed the travel ban and said green card holders can come in, but different people can't. So these uncertainties that we live in have taken a toll on the immigration policy and the system. But once Biden comes in, he has vowed, for example, to take action on DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. Millions of young children are living, with that status. The other thing, most importantly, he has vowed to take care of the executive order on the Muslim ban, travel ban. I personally have done dozens of the travel bans. So, for example, I had a client who was of Afghan national. His wife, was Iranian. So she was under the travel ban. We worked together for a year. And I would say about 2-3 months ago, I was able to unite her with him. And so these are catastrophic situations that legally by law should have not been there. So those are the travel ban, the executive orders, all of those. But having said that, like you said, with COVID, even though those policies are put forward where we are going forward positively in immigration, maybe putting forth policies to move USCIS faster or National Visa Center. But where we're going to get halted is the embassies due to COVID. So we may see positive impact and positive changes, but I don't know unless, the Biden administration says something. I don't know how they would force the embassies to be open. I don't think they have the leeway to do that if the COVID conditions are bad. So I was on a webinar yesterday with over 350 attorneys. The exact same issue is that here we have policies, our stores are closing, our grocery stores are closing, everything, the gyms are closing. So how are you going to enforce the embassies to reopen? So for the long run, we have two parallel challenges. Biden coming in, reversing a lot of the policies, but then we're halted due to COVID. So maybe we ride out the winter, and then in spring, if conditions get better with COVID, this policies would have been in place to move things forward.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So you brought up the Muslim ban, and that sparked a memory within myself. I was a volunteer translator at the local, three local airports that surround me, and I think it was March. I remember very clearly. It was one of my actually at the time was not my clients, but just somebody that was coming in with an SIV visa in his hands. As soon as he got off the airplane, and he went into customs, they ICE came, took his visa, and revoked it. And so I was with the other attorneys, and I was called in to do interpretation. I went in, and the day that we went in, after the immigration officer conducted his interview, he said, all right, this is a misunderstanding. He's not going to be deported, but, in 2 weeks, he will be released. He was 2 days after that incident incarcerated. So what was supposed to have been a 2-week ordeal ended up a year and a half of him being in the detention center, and us having to visit him weekly, and work through the system and figure out what happened. And I know that earlier you brought up a lawsuit, and there was 2 cases going on at the same time. One, that his civil liberties were not respected in the first 40 hours that he was in this country, and the other one was that he was being held unlawfully. But at that time, although Afghanistan, the interesting part was not on a Muslim ban, but it didn't seem to matter for a lot of people. They were still directly impacted. وقتی که یک اما وقتی که مسلم بین نو شده بود، ما والنتیر ترجمان بودم در میدان هوایی، و یک کیس بود. یک بچه آمد سپیشل ایمیگرنت ویزا، برای ما زنگ زدن که بیا که ای ویزه از زیر آیس گرفت، و گفتن که 2 هفته داره، 2 روز بعد ببخشین دیپورت میشه، پاسروی میشه افغانستان. ما که رسیدم امروی وکیلا ایره ول چک کردن، دستایش پایایش ایره بردن، بندی کردن. در بندی خانه که رفتیم، امیگریشن آفیسر گفت 2 هفته بعد ایره اعلام میکنیم. اما متاسفانه 1.5 سال گرفت. افغانستان در مسلم بین نبود، اما بازم نفرایی که از افغانستان می آمدن سرشان تاثیر کرد. سو فکر نکنین که تنها مملکتایی که در لیست بود و سرشان تاثیر کرده باشه. There was an impact on other people as well.
Yeah, no, I was hearing that all Afghanistan's on the ban, certain countries are not, but they were all being, even though they were not policy on the ban, and the impact was catastrophic all across. And we saw that in everything that we did. When Kasaki as Hajj می آمدن، green card holder ها بودن، the secondary inspection میمان، مردم ها پیر بودن، بیچاره دوایشان، blood pressure, hypertension. کسی که با secondary، کسی که در میدان هوایی میآین، باز که secondary inspection میره، وکیلا رو اونجا نمیمانن، کتی وکیلا گپ نمیزنن. So کار ما یک ذره مشکل بود که تلفن میکنین، اگر یک دفعه که میفهمیدن که یک وکیل زنگ میزد، باز تغییر میکردن. چوکسی پس secondary inspection که راتلو آت کواله نسیسی وکیلانی بیامگو کواله نسیسی کمک کشتر رو که یه لار پیدا کسر رو باسی. A lot of times they were saying, you've stayed over, if you stay over a year, you're a green card holder. There are consequences where they have to allow you in legally, and then you get put into deportation proceedings and you go through the route. They can never put you on a plane and deport you. But what we were seeing through the Council on American Islamic Relations was they were, even if they were saying under a year, they were just saying, make it easier for yourself, just sign the deportation papers, and then you can just deal with them when you get back to your country. So we were doing a lot of know your rights presentations, and I think that's important in our community to do that. And Alhamdulillah, Kara has done an amazing job of doing these, FBI informants, FBI visits to the homes. You're going a month, but Care volunteer for them, board member keep them. با کمیونیتی ما میرفتیم که کس بیاد خانه تانیا دروازه رو باز نکنیم، پرسان بکنیم، کارتش بگیرین، در خانه نبیارین، چای بدین، coffee بدینش. You know, as funny as it sounds, people do, you know. And so those are the education, yeah, those are the educational tools we were providing people. So the ban, you know, overall has impacted everybody in some way.
Absolutely. And a huge shout out to CARE. I've also had the pleasure of working with them so closely. And I think that this is an incredible organization. So make sure that if you're looking for somebody to support, go ahead. I'm going to make a shameless plug and say to donate to their services. They do, you know, give free legal counsel, and they do these wonderful presentations. Know Your Rights is such an incredible one. I know that whenever I meet, especially young male Muslims, I always give them the Know Your Rights card. They have to tell them, keep this in your pocket. If somebody asks you anything, you know, follow this protocol. It's so incredibly important because a lot of the times you think you know your rights, but you really don't, unless this is your area of expertise and something you're dealing with.
Yeah, and CARE is the largest civil rights organization for Muslim Americans in the United States. They have over 37 and growing, alhamdulillah. Growing. I had the you know, honor of serving on their board for 6 years and serving as the president of the largest. And it was humbling to work with so many Muslims and stuff. And also for me as an Afghan woman, you know, Spojmie. So a lot of times they're like, what kind of name is that? You know, are you Russian? Are you, no, I'm Afghan. Oh, I haven't met an Afghan, you know. So it's important for civic engagement for our community to not only do what we do, but get engaged in civic and political engagement. And alhamdulillah, First John, you've been in the forefront of that. And so keep encouraging our young, population to continue to do that, because it does serve a purpose. It brings us out in the light that we are able to be a part of the community and make a change that we want to see.
Absolutely. MashaAllah, Council of American Relations, Islamic Relations, بسیاری CARE بسیاری ارگان کلان است، کلانترین civil rights ارگان در امریکا. ماشاءالله الحمدلله که اسپوجمای جانم خیلی کمک کرده و بورد ممبر بود برای چندین 6 سال. این بسیار یک جای افتخار است و همیشه چون وکیلای بدون پول میگیرن بسیار کوشش کنین که اگه میخواین یک جای ثوابی دونیشن بدین، دونیت کنین. بسیار سرویس ها دارن، کار ثواب میکنن. یک کارت دارن به نام Know Your Rights، حق داره بشناسین. او رو همیشه برای بچهای جوان مسلمان که میشناسم برشان میتونم میگم میره در جیبتان نگاه کنین. اگه پلیس استادتان کرد یا FBI در پشت دروازه‌تان آمد، متوجه باشین. قانون حقوق خود بفهمین. اگه نفهمین خب هر کار باز حتما چی می باشه امکانات.
یکی فش جان مهم است کسا که بفهمن با که چی کارا میکنه. کس که ما جوانا زنا که نرسا بودن اینجا در کالیفرنیا با وقت رمضان که چادر میپوشیدن، حجاب میپوشیدن، دیسکریمینیشن میکردن که نماز میکنی کجا چیزا با civil rights با هر چی با قانونی که ما حق داریم با religion یا legal representation میتا. یک وقت چا کار کاو په یو دکان کې او منیجر ورته ویل چې نه ته مخکې کار نسی کولای، ته چې جاب اغوندې you don't fit our image, you work in the back room. Abercrombie and Fitch, CARE sued them. They wouldn't allow this young lady to work in the front because she didn't meet the image of Abercrombie, and that was one of the biggest lawsuits. So it's all kinds of discrimination based on religion that we face. CARE's in the forefront. So if anybody's ever in need of those services, look out to your local chapters, and they do provide legal representation. People who have been turned away on a plane, they bought a ticket, they've been turned away for racial profiling, religious profiling, very, very visible cases that CARE does and takes on. So I try to pitch CARE because our community is not aware as much as they should be, and maybe it's just my passion in it. So it's like, what do you mean? You don't know.
You're doing the best service to people possible, because it is an organization that helps people out. And I'm not on the board. I'm not an employee. I'm, I am a supporter and an advocate of their work because I've seen what type of results it's produced. And I know personally so many attorneys and people, incredible people that are working and doing this, to help people.
Yeah, a few years ago here in the Bay Area, not a few years ago, I would say maybe 10 years ago, gosh, it's been that long. There was an Afghan woman, hijabi, with her children, and she got shot in the face while she was walking her kid, and the person was a vet. So there was some leniency for his sentence, but Kara was an advocate to uphold the sentence because point blank, he shot her in the face while she was walking her kids. And so it's extraordinary work that our community, I think, doesn't see as much. So, they go around to the masjids and do all of the work. And there's a lot of young Afghans that are taking part now than before.
Absolutely. And thank you for being that Afghan representative, that name that nobody knows. I'm so familiar with that. What are you? Where are you from? We are a new wave of immigrants, and we're not as familiar as.
No, one point I would make is that, it's interesting dichotomy if you think about it, and a lot of people don't think about it, is that, there's us, there's my generation that came in the 80s. And then there's the older generation, our parents. And then there's the new younger generation like yourself and all those born here, right? So we sort of get lost and people don't realize that, alhamdulillah, there's a lot of us, a million more than myself, that are accomplished, but we're just not there in the community. So we sort of lose that generation, our generation that came here in the 80s, that, lived the immigrant through our parents and struggled to make it. And there are a lot of physicians, there's a lot of lawyers I have a lot of friends and in different professions that we've made it through. So I try to remind people, don't lose sight of our generation.
Absolutely. And that's so incredibly important to say, because even myself as a child of an immigrant parent and a refugee parent, so incredible that living through the 80s, the 90s, and growing up here with them as parents and seeing how much they struggled and living, like you said, like, let's not forget about that. Let's not forget about all the sacrifices that were made and that extremely important generation. Thank you for pointing that out. برای من قرامان است و هر کسی که در او وقت 80 و 90 آمدن اینجا و کوشش کردن زحمت کشیدن، این بسیار کار سخت است، این کار آسان نیست. همیشه هیچ وقت باید فراموش نکنیم. Spojmie, I wanted to ask you what your advice was to anybody in the audience that's facing issues with any of the offices at the moment. I know that you said that, that the embassies are closed and COVID is a huge, besides the administration, I mean, COVID is really a huge factor right now in what's going on. I know a lot of, I'm going to combine two questions into one, and I also know a lot of Afghans who try to say, you know what, I don't need an attorney, I'm going to do this on my own. I personally encourage everybody to seek legal counsel, and I personally think that it's very important to do that. But I would love to see or to hear your take on it. سری نفراست پیش من میپرسن که امی کار کمک یا فرما خانه پوری کنم خودشم، من خودم میکنم، من وکیل کار ندارم، اما من تشویقشان میکنم، میگم که این یک چیز مهم است، کوشش کنین که وکیل بگیرین.
I'll say it in about 3 languages because I think this is very important. I'll keep it brief.
Sure.
I think in this day and age, you cannot do this without an attorney. And I'm not pitching this as an attorney to come to me. I'm pitching it as you need an attorney, whether it's me or someone else, because the process is much more complicated. And nothing upsets me more than when someone calls and says, you charge so much just to fill out a paper. And I say, I'm not a paper fill outer, I'm an attorney. You want the legal representation. You want the knowledge in here that took me 20 years to get to do your work. So no, I'm not a paper fill outer. And I say that with all due respect, because regardless of what type of petition you're filing for your sibling, for your parents, for your spouse, for your namzad, there's tremendous amount of processes. There's the USCIS, there's the NVC, there's the Afghanistan, the process. You'd be surprised how many cases when somebody's done it on their own, get to Kabul, when they're being interviewed, that immigrant spouse has no idea what the US and living person does, and they get denied for fraud because they know nothing about that person. So in any profession. I wouldn't go practice. I wouldn't be, go practice medicine because I don't know anything about that. I've done other areas of law, but the last 10 years has been immigration. So when someone comes and says, do family law, I said, no, I'm going to refer you because I don't do it. I'm not going to dabble to risk someone's case. So more than anything, it's very, very important to have an attorney because no, you're not hiring the attorney to do a paper fill out some paperwork. It's to make sure every question that you fill out, an example would be someone filled out their citizenship application. This is a classic example. There's a question on the N400 that says, have you ever been cited, arrested, or detained by law enforcement? So this guy did his own citizenship, Afghan guy, very nice guy. And he got denied because he said no, because he didn't know, but the officer had been cited for something, but it was all convoluted in one question. So he had a second interview and he was freaking out. Someone told him, come with me. We go to the interview and the first thing the officer says, so you've been arrested? The guy goes, no, I haven't been arrested. He goes, yes, you have. I said, no, he hasn't. He was cited for citation. There's a difference between citation and arrest and detained. The officer just sat back there. I'm not saying Spojmie made a difference. I'm saying the lawyer made a difference in being in that room and making it. So that's why more than anything, and I know that lawyers are expensive, and I know that sometimes people don't trust attorneys, and may you find the best one that fits you to fill the needs. I'll just say shortly and Farsi and Pashto. بسیار مهم است بیادر خارجانا که کسا که میخواین کیس پیش ببرن که وکیل داشته باشه. من نمیگم که ما وکیل هستیم پیش ما بیاین. هر کس که باشه این پروسس حال بسیار مشکل شده. یک غلطی خردترک امکان است که کل کیس دینای شوه، جنجالا میشه. باز اگر چی کارا خراب شده بینی که میکنین زیادتر وقت میگیره، زیادتر پیسه میگیره که وکیل بگیری جور کنین. ورونو خوند خدای دې کسی تاسیسات خیلی په خیر یو اډوایس زلاره مې کسان غواړي خپل کیسونه مخته ویسي ډیر مهم دی چې وکیل ولري. زه داسې نه وایم چې زه وکیل یم ما پسې راسئ، زه وایم چې هر چېرته چې وکیل یا کولی شي د وکیل سره یو لږ وخت خبرې ورسره وکړي چې کیس مخته ویسي. امکان ده که څه غلطي راسي کیس کولی شي چې ډینای سي یا پروسس ونه سي یا مشکلات سي. One of the other things I would say, Fresher John, is very important is if somebody can afford to even have a consultation with an attorney. Have a consultation with an attorney. Another example I just got was my client's in California. He's 19 and he's marrying a young lady who's 16. And in California, the legal age of marriage is 18. It doesn't matter that the marriage is legal in Afghanistan. It has to be legal where the person resides, which is the United States. So there's a couple of protocols that we have to take in order to make that valid before he goes back to Afghanistan and gets married. So with all due respect, it's not just paper filling out. Every question is a legal consequence. So I would reiterate that. And, attorneys are expensive, but, if you can work out a payment plan, if you can do something, I think it's important. The biggest factor, I don't know in your area, but I know in our area, there's a couple of people called notaries, notarios, kasaki kağıtları falan mekunen.
Yes.
They may have done some good, but in this day and age, the chances of something happening are catastrophic. So I tell people, someone called me the other day and said, I went to Flani, and he's going to charge me this much, but I want to go with you. And I said, I'm sorry, that person is not a lawyer. Response in Farsi, I was like, the person is not a lawyer, but go ahead, do whatever you want to do, because they said, why are you charging so much? The other lawyer is not charging that much. And I said, I'm sorry, he's not a lawyer. So she went off on me in Farsi, and I said, okay, good luck, and what you do. So I think it's important to educate our community that there are lawyers who have gone to school. And I said, was that 15 سال درس خواندیم اینجا با license داره با قانونی اون نفر وکیل نیست. And her answer was غیبت میکنی. So I was like, okay. So I think it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a reason why an attorney has JD Juris Doctorate, meaning you're a doctorate of law. You are, you've received that. You received that after so many decades of education. And I've been in very sticky situations, where if the attorney wasn't present, I know 100% that would have been an epic fail, because a lot of the times, if you have experience with these officers, I've had the craziest things happen. There was an officer who didn't, and I don't want to take up too much time, but he didn't completely clear. He had like a template of where he answered his questions, like during the interview. He didn't completely clear the screen. And he had, before the Afghan, he had somebody from Nigeria, somebody from this, it escapes my mind, this terrorist group that was kidnapping children. It's escaped my mind right now, but
Boko Haram.
yes, thank you, Boko Haram. Thank you, Boko Haram. So he forgot to erase a part of the template. And when he went to do our interview, and I was there as a witness, two other attorneys were there, he forgot to delete that. So when we went to court, they were like, "You're part of Boko Haram." And he's like, "What are you talking about? I'm not even Nigerian. I'm from Afghanistan." But when I'm ما کم گرفتن. They're like, "Ne, tu as Boko Haram hasti, immigration officer gufti که هستی." And it's like, but it's so if the attorney weren't there, God knows how long this process would have been dragged out. And I'm pretty sure that it was just going to be that person's, word versus a federal agent. But, a lot of these people, like I said, that you come across, I mean, if you've ever spoken to, no offense, but, some ICE agents and stuff like that, their training is not really anywhere near what you would imagine or you would think.
Oh yeah, no, the discrepancy between a nice officer who's in high school educated person. I do a lot of deportation cases, and I get the door slammed on my face, and I just stand there and I knock on the door right back. And so
Yeah.
it's yeah, they're not the most educated people. But the other thing I would say is that you could do the forms correctly and do everything, but all particularly for Afghan cases, نام مادر عالمه باشه. As September 2020, we get the rights to put the child's name on the mother's name on the child's birth certificate, but prior to September 2020, it wasn't. So اگر دختر باشه با مادر پدرشان فایل میکنه، اگر دختر یا بچه باشه با مادرش فایل میکنه، نام مادر در تذکره نمی باشه. There's a special way to handle that. They're also now asking, not only are they asking for tazkira, which is the national identity card, but they're also asking for kart tawalud. Well, what a joke. Nobody has a kart tawalud from those years ago, right? But there's a way to prepare for it. So having an attorney who's done extensive research, extensive knowledge to do that. So I think those things are important now more than ever.
Of course, and it's the most the right way to go about it, because somebody who's culturally competent would even know. I've spoken to attorneys where I've advised them. I'm not an attorney. I've advised them of the tazkira process, and the attorney said to me, because they're not culturally competent, said to me, "Wait, what's this?
What's a tazkiri? What's a karti?" I was like,
task. What's a tazkiri? What does this mean? What do you mean you don't have a birth certificate? Listen, not all attorneys who are not culturally competent know what it means not to be able to provide a residential address in Afghanistan. They don't understand what it means that down the block from Kaka's Dukan and around the corner from the masjid is my house.
Right?
So off this particular main road. So getting an attorney who's culturally competent also is extremely important with these cases. I know that our time is really coming to an end, but before we end, any closing thoughts? While you're doing that, I'm going to share screen with an event that's coming up for Afghan Americans or anybody who's interested in applying for federal jobs as we're speaking about this. I just wanted to share screen that very quickly as my weekly announcement. And if you have any closing thoughts, we would love to hear it.
So I think my closing thoughts would just be for any Afghans, particularly females, if you're inspired by any kind of work, whether you want to be a physician, whether you want to be a lawyer, whether you want to do public service, find a mentor. I think in my age when I was going, it was tough because colleagues که دختر باشه انجینر باشه, right? I was one of the few. So I think if anyone's looking for this type of work, find a mentor, find someone that can guide you. I'm always open. I love, mentoring. I get calls from young girls all the time about how to go about it, how to get the foot in the door. One of the things I would say is don't be afraid to call someone. The worst they're going to say is no, or they hang up, or they don't help you. So what? Move on to the next person. Don't let it get to you, And there's a lot of people, I'm sure out in your area, there's a couple of Afghan attorneys they'll, I'm sure, would love to, be mentors. So continue to be a part of the community, and take it with strides, and inshallah the future is going to be much brighter than it has been.
Absolutely, inshallah. And Spojmie John, there's no words that I can use to thank you for everything that you've told us today and all of the really important information and guidance. Again, I can't emphasize this enough. We're so incredibly proud and honored to have you as part of our community. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for your time and for your efforts. یک جهان سپاس از طرف صدای حق تلویزیون که شما وقت خود امروز دادین و یک افتخار هستین در کمیونیتی ما که همه مردم ما را کمک میکنین. و پیش از این که خلاص شویم یک announcement داشتم که Federal Government Employment 101 در روز Tuesday November 17 میتونین راجستر کنین و از طریق زوم میتونین که شما امروی experts and professionals ببینین که چی رقم بتونین اپلای کنین برای یک وظیفه یا کار the federal government. So make sure that you tune into that if you have time and if that's something you're interested in. Thank you also, Spojmie John, for offering your mentorship. I think that nobody that I know, including myself, could have made it to where I am today without important and influential mentors such as yourself.
Thank you very much, First John, for having me and allowing me this opportunity. I'm humbled and I'm honored, that our community is, voicing all of us in the community, and may Allah continue to give you endless blessings in all the work that you do. And you and I have a special connection because we're doing similar work. So,
yes,
so thank you for that.
Yeah, we're going to connect for sure because, like you said, it's so hard to relate to people who are not in quote unquote in the trenches, right? Yeah. So I think that the trench work is so difficult. And I'm so incredibly glad to have met you and have had you on our show. و امروز بازم تشکر از وقتتان در برنامه ما و در هر نقطه دنیا که هستین خوش و آرام باشین. اگه سوال داشته باشین در زیر سکرین نمره تلفن است، میتونین که زنگ بزنین در این نمره از پیش Spojmie John پرسان کنین سوالی که داشته باشین. If you have any questions, there's a number at the bottom of our screen. Feel free to give us a call. We'll either connect Spojmie John to you or hold the questions and have her answer them and get back to you next week. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
تشکر. خدای پامان. مننه.